more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the playoffs and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, getting you set for the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche. Puck drop tomorrow, 6 p.m. in downtown Winnipeg. It'll probably, actually, I guess game 4 is also at a very reasonable afternoon hour. But nonetheless, we're excited. We're pumped. The Jets and the Avs, it's going to be a great series. Quite likely the closest of the 8 series on paper. And we spend the next couple of hours discussing it all in detail. Great to see you guys on this Saturday morning. You can feel the excitement in the air. That's what you have right now. The regular season was fun.
And Drew, you're talking about 420, obviously.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Happy 420 as well.
This must be Mary Jane's favorite day of the year, right?
It's nice that Mary Jane found the time to join us for that while celebrating 420.
Mary Jane's going to be taking a nap in a few hours.
So were you there, big boy? Maybe if you're lucky.
I've never inhaled, Drew.
I know you never once did you ever inhale. That's very true.
I've only exhaled.
As an aside, is much less of a day now that it's all legalized. Remember back in the when we were teenagers and in our 20s, legislative building, there would just be a cloud of smoke you'd have to waft through, and every hot dog vendor in the city would be lined up on Broadway ready to feed the masses. Much less significant now that everything on that end of the spectrum has been legalized.
I sold hot dogs once. Remember back in the day, of course, I sold hot dogs.
I did.
That was the easiest $200 I ever made. Like selling hot dogs at 420. It's like you don't even have to there were people that would come up to me that were so high that they couldn't even talk, and I would just hand them a hot dog, and they would usually pay in change because potheads usually have no money in that pocket full of change. But yes, happy 420, and obviously, happy day before the big Jets Avalanche game 1.
There you go. That's exactly why we're here. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're focused on that. As I was saying, the excitement is in the air. You can feel it sort of around the city, the build up to it, the crescendo to it. Sort of fitting that we had this cold, lousy, snowy weather for the last couple of days. Get you into that mindset now. It's supposed to be nice and for the whiteouts and for the parties on the street. And of course, we'll be at City Place, downtown Winnipeg tomorrow for the pregame show right at 4 o'clock or so. So be sure to join us in the food court, second floor of City Place tomorrow for another pregame show ahead of the Jets and the Avs. But this to me is just the classic matchup of offense versus defense. I mean, we know where the strengths of each of these two teams lie. For the Jets, it's their depth. It's their goaltending. It's their commitment to team defense that we've seen all year long. It's been demonstrated through the winning of the Jennings Trophy. And then you have the Avalanche with the game breakers, the McKinnons and the Makars, and their lack of depth and their lack of defense and their lack of goaltending. Strength versus strength. If defense wins championships, we will see if the Jets are able to do that, or will the offense of the Avs be too much for the Jets to overcome? I'm excited. No real rivalry at all to speak of. No playoff history between these two teams, but that you can feel the head-on-head battle building up between these two.
Absolutely, Drew. I think you nailed it there. The Jets don't have a 140 player like McKinnon, or they don't have a 102-point player, 104-point player like Mikko Rantanen.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked about it, the strength of this Jets team all year long. There was a stretch there, guys, from mid-January till the end of March, there was a stretch there where the Jets were a 500 hockey team. But as Dave M has talked about, the Jets were the only unbeaten team in the league in the month of April. They obviously saved the best for last with 8 straight wins, right? So the Jets don't have the superstar power. But for me, guys, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the show with Ted Wyman and then Craig Button next hour. I think the edge in goal it was already in the Jets' favor, boys. But now with the way Georgiev has played down the stretch, I think it's even more of an edge. Like you can go series by series, and you could clearly see, for example, in the Boston-Toronto series with Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark, the Bruins have a huge advantage over the Leafs. But if you go throughout the other series, there isn't as big of a advantage as there is for the Jets in this series, I believe. And I think a lot of people are with me. Connor Hellebuyck, front runner to win the Vezina, and God forbid, he can't go. Laurent Brossoit comes in and he had an excellent season. The fact that there's even discussion, guys, about whether the Avalanche are going to start Justus Annunen shows you, just how fragile, I would say, the goaltending situation is with the Avalanche. So you're absolutely right, Drew. The Jets don't have the high-end superpower, but when you combine, Gabriel Velarde now on that top line with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor, and the way they've been clicking at 5-on-5, and then you go down the lineup. Like, to me, it's once you get down to the third and fourth lines, like Ross Colton, Miles Wood. You guys know Zach Parise, one of my favorite players of all time, over 1,200 games played. I mean, you're going to give the Jets the edge in their bottom lines, right, Dave? And then you'd give the Avalanche the edge when it comes to special teams, right? Top 5 power play. I think their penalty kill was something like 11th or 12th, and no other team scored more goals than the Avalanche this year, right? So it's really, to me, it's going to be a skating series. It's going to be the Jets defense versus the Avalanche offense. I mean, I know it's not as simple as that, but I also think that 7-0 win, just a week ago, is still in the backs of the minds.
Well, so let me interrupt you there, right there. So you mentioned that. I want Dave to get in here. You talk about the 7-0 win. The Jets were relatively dominant against the Avs all season long. Do you think that plays any factor at all into this series, Dave? Even if it's just to give the Jets a little bit more of a confidence boost. That 7-0 game just is such an anomaly, and how one-sided it was. Is there anything lingering from that game? The Jets immediately, to their credit, downplayed it, said, look, that wasn't the Colorado Avalanche team that we're going to meet in the playoffs. Despite the Jets saying that, do you think that there's any that is in the back of the minds at all and might have any bearing on this series?
Well, you're right. They've downplayed it, but what else are they going to say? That team was the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever did suck. I mean, they're not going to say that they handed it to the Colorado Avalanche. Why would they hand them any bulletin board material unnecessarily? So Rick Bowness, was smart in terms of, he's a veteran guy. He said exactly what you'd expect a veteran coach to say. And that, he said, we did not see the Avs A game. We saw their C game. And so he doesn't anticipate that. And, the players all quickly turn the page on that, which is probably the appropriate thing to do, because you also don't want to be sitting back and thinking you've got this in the bag. So you want to have some desperation. You don't look, the Jets play best. It just seems to me like whenever they are discounted and when the majority of folks are against them, when they're the underdogs, probably a lot like the City. Maybe that's why the City connects well with this team, because, they're better. The City of Winnipeg is a bit underdogish in the NHL. And I think this team appreciates it better when they are not well regarded. At least that's the way it appears. Whenever they start to get elite from Drew Mandel, that's when they start to falter. So
I won't say a word.
Yeah. So I think that this team does best in, that sort of situation. And I think, again, it's very measured around the room. We spoke to Adam Lowry yesterday and heard from him. And you can see these guys have I would say, a very quiet confidence about them right now. I think that there's a lot of belief in the team. And Rick Bowness has said it. They're a good hockey team. They won 52 hockey games this year. That's not an accident. We joked about the fraud comment, which I think the Jets have put to bed. And collectively, this group is playing a very good brand of hockey. Now, look, there have been signs of not great hockey during the stretch of winning, right, guys? Like, we don't forget that 17 scoring chances given up against Nashville, where they won because of Connor Hellebuyck. But ultimately, as we've said on the show probably 1,000 times, you don't apologize for having the best goaltender in the NHL. So that's the strength that you've drafted, you've developed him, and he is the biggest asset of this team. But also collectively, and Drew, you touched on it in your opening sort of monologue, but this Jets team is a defensive, I don't want to call it a juggernaut, but stalwart was actually the word I was going to go with, because look, they only allowed 199 goals this year, and that's significant. So yeah, it's going to be a real interesting series. I'm eagerly anticipating it, and I think it's going to make for a heck of a series. And Jets fans are going to get lucky because, like you said, Drew, it was a little cold the last couple of days. 15 degrees tomorrow for around puck drop. So it'll be shorts weather for most folks.
including you for sure.
Well, no, not me, because I'm going into
You'll
the
be
game.
in the
So I'll
game,
be in a
yeah, I
suit,
guess.
so.
Yeah, you can wear shorts and a suit jacket. It'll be a good look for you.
Exactly.
Obviously, both teams coming into the game are relatively healthy. There are a couple guys who are banged up. Morgan Barron, we know for the Winnipeg Jets, won't play in tomorrow's game 1. For Colorado, Logan O'Connor is going to be out of their lineup. Another one of their sort of the depth pieces, which is sort of where the Jets really have that strength over the Avs is towards the bottom of the lineup, the depth pieces on the lineup.
O'Connor's out for the season, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So you won't see him. Sam Girard still day to day. He was dealing with a concussion that he suffered against the Jets, if I recall correctly, in that game on that Saturday. I guess that would have been a couple weeks ago at this point in time. Or was that just last week? I guess that was just last Saturday.
Last week.
It's just really blending together. Thank you to Stan for contributing some $10. If that helps you feel better, towards our cause, we support you wholeheartedly in your endeavor to do so. Totally unnecessary, but we do appreciate the generosity nonetheless, Stan. Thank you for that.
I am Stan Scott.
You are Stan Scott. That's what I sort of thought.
There goes Ezzy's profit from his hot dog money.
Yeah, that's right. Ezzy's going to be back outside the Ledge ground selling hot dogs for $4.20, except there won't be anybody there this time.
Hey guys, I have a lot of summer camps coming up for my kids this summer, so I can take every single dollar I can get.
They are not cheap. You're right about that. As I'm in the same boat as you are there when it comes to summer camps and day camps in the summer, and they are not the most affordable thing in the world. Rick Bowness tight-lipped about who's going to come into the Jets lineup for Morgan Barron.
It's going to be Gus Bus, guys, right?
I would think so, yeah.
It just makes so much sense. Like obviously, Drew, it's between all due respect to Rasmus Kupari and his one game. Kupari, I don't think is in the conversation. So I think the reason why, obviously I jumped in there, Drew, but I think Gus Bus has the edge just because of the way he recently played, right? On the third line, and the Jets outscored their opponents 10-0 in those 2 wins. So I expect David Gustafsson to play, and when Morgan Barron's ready to go, Dave, Gus comes out of the lineup, Barron goes back in. And I think, Drew is right. We talk about, the depth of the Avalanche. You've got Brandon Duhaime, Yakov Trenin, and Andrew Cogliano. Those are, decent players, right. But the Jets have the edge when you've got Vlad Nemesnikov, Alex Iafallo, and even if it's Gustafsson, you lose a little bit of offense for sure. Barron's more of an offensive player, so you lose some of his offense, but Gustafsson is a very reliable forward, and he's kind of that jack of all trades, right, Dave? He's not going to play on either power play unit, but he's a guy that, he's going to do whatever the coach asks of him, and he'll do it well, right? So I expect it to be Gustafsson, and hopefully Barron's going to be ready to go for game 2, or if he's not ready to go for game 2, he's ready for the games in Colorado.
Well, look, the fourth line for the Jets, if it, assuming, that, of course, you're going to have Nemesnikov and Iafallo together, just the 2 of them have combined for 22 goals. That's the huge difference in this series, or one of the big differences in the series, is the Jets can get some goals and can get some scoring from the bottom of the lineup. They can roll those 4 lines through and not just sort of be, like it's been in previous years, hold on for dear life and hope you get through that shift, sort of holding on. They can actually spend offensive zone time. They can contribute offensively. These are guys who have played higher in the lineup, at various points in time this season. That is a huge advantage for the Winnipeg Jets. That's where the Jets are going to need to succeed and find their greatest success, is really, wearing down the Avs, wearing down the sort of bottom of the Avalanche lineup, winning those shifts after shifts where they can tilt the ice a little bit. That's where the Jets have been at their best all season long. And when they were struggling, when they had lost those 6 games in a row, you weren't seeing that. You weren't seeing, I know I've used this word a lot, you weren't seeing the connectivity between all the players on a shift in a line. And that's when the Jets are certainly flying the highest, is when those 3 players, who are the forward group in this instance, when that forward group is going one after another and cycling hard. And that's when they're so hard to play against, Dave. And that's when the Jets really, I think, can get an advantage over some of the guys at the bottom of the lineup for the Colorado Avalanche. Zach Parise, great career. This is going to be it. This is his last year. I think he said he's not playing after this year, and maybe officially he said that. Andrew Cogliano, again, another guy, great veteran player. but these are target rich environments for the Winnipeg Jets if they're going as they should with the bottom of their lineup against the Avs.
Yeah, no, and I look, Rick Bowness was asked about that, whether this series will be won, or the impact, I should say, of the third and fourth lines and how significant it can be for the Jets. And one of the things we've spoken about since the beginning of this year, and obviously even more so when they added Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli, is the depth of this team. And now you've got a lot of guys, and think about the guys who aren't on this team who played big roles like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Dominic Toninato during that stretch of time when the Jets were winning. And then, of course, they've been down with the Moose. But the point is that this team has a ton of depth. You could throw Cole Perfetti, who has 19 goals, right? And he has a lot of chemistry with Alex Iafallo. Now, I understand and I agree it's probably going to be Gustafsson. Yeah. And the comment, as he just highlighted, it was the idea that you have a guy who can win faceoffs. So that's not a bad thing because he's obviously a natural center and he's a PKer. So that's going to be a significant addition to the team, right? We talk about being able to play multiple roles. So, that's another reason why you think David Gustafsson is going to be the guy who gets that call. And we should know that the Jets are practicing at 11 o'clock at Hockey for All. So we'll hopefully see one of our media colleagues tweeting out the lines, which, as you said, Drew, Rick Bowness. Rick Button. We're having Craig Button on. Boy, I'm really on this morning, Ezzy. But Rick Bowness
excited. It's all good.
Yeah, Rick Bowness was very tight-lipped about the idea of who would be coming in for Morgan Barron. I don't know why, because again, they're going to do line rushes today, I would imagine. So we'll get a much better sense as to who is going to be available. And the other thing that I guess we should mention that came out yesterday was that Colin Delia would be the third goalie for the Jets. He'll be the backup to Hellebuck and Brossoit when one of them doesn't want to skate. But it's just, and most likely that's Hellebuck for the record. But it's funny because the Jets made the announcement, boys, that they had sent, the 4 players back to the Moose in Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Parker Ford, and Colin Delia. And then I'm sitting there in Hockey for All Center talking to Kelly Moore, Paul Edmonds, and Colin Delia walks past me in like full goalie gear. And I'm like, didn't they just send you to Texas? Why are you in full goalie gear? And then, of course, check Twitter, and they had announced him as an emergency recall. So he'll be up. And then I asked Rick Bowness about it, and he said he'll be the third goalie for the playoffs. So that's going to be not a huge surprise. And, of course, we know Thomas Milic will be the guy in Manitoba land.
Yeah, for the Mooses, they had a great game last night. Dave will touch on that later on in the show. The Moose and Ville Heinola, 5 points last night, goal and 4 assists. So certainly, the future is still high for Ville Heinola. Probably not come this playoffs series, but nonetheless, next year, that he's got his target set on the Winnipeg Jets. Forgetting about that, moving away back to the Jets and the Avs. I mean, to me, it's the recent hot streak the Jets are on. I mean, do you put much stock in, starting the playoffs or getting into the playoffs with a good head of speed, a good head of momentum, good playing behind them? Because the Jets, like you said, haven't lost in April, winners of their last 8 games to end the regular season. So they are flying as high as they've flown all season in terms of, consecutive games won. How much impact do you think that will have on the Winnipeg Jets? They are, as we said, playing great hockey as of late. I think the Avs are going into the playoffs sort of, middling as of late. How much impact do you think that will have, or is that just sort of immediately thrown out once the puck is dropped on game 1?
You obviously can't quantify it, right? Like, so the answer I would give to that is the same answer we give every single year when you ask that question, right, Drew? I think you have to take some stock in the way the Jets played over the last games. I think if the Jets, for example, were 2-6, I think, that would affect, how many people were picking the Jets to win the series, meaning that more people would be picking the Avalanche, right? So I think it bodes well going into the playoffs. But look, it's been proven year after year that momentum doesn't necessarily transfer into the playoffs, right? So the Jets, I think, the biggest thing about that winning streak is that the Jets defeated the Avalanche and the Stars by a combined 10-0 score and were dominant in those 2 games. And those are the 2 teams that are your obstacles to, 3 of the 4 teams that are the obstacles to getting to the Western Conference, right? A lot of us expect Dallas to win the first round series, but it's not a guarantee. So I think it's because of those 2 games that were so impressive And so I think, look, I think the differences I think are a little bit overstated between the Jets and the Avalanche. Like, yes, the Jets have better forward depth. But as I talked about, like, Ross Colton, Miles Wood, like these are good players. But I think it's ultimately going to come down to who executes better and if the Jets can stick to a certain style of play. We know the Jets are the most successful when they play a tight defensive structure and they're a pressure team. We talked about it. Like Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, like Devon Taves. He's had a quiet good year. Jonathan Drouin, nobody talks about him. He had a career year.
He'll be the comeback player of the year in the NHL.
Yeah, it's possible. Valerie Nichushkin also, I believe, had a career high in points. So it's not just Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, guys. Like, it's not like, this team has a lot. Arturi Lehkonen on the second line is a good player, right? There's a lot of good players on this team. Devon Taves, 50 points this year, right? Like, Cale Makar gets a lot of the attention. I think it's going to come down to, can the Jets stay out of the penalty box? Can the Avalanche stay out of the penalty box? We saw that in the 7-0 win. The Jets, I think, was it 2 or 3 power play goals in the first period? I forget. I think it was 2 power play goals in the first period. So
yeah, Morrissey and Velarde, if I recall correctly, had 2 in the first period.
Yeah, so I mean,
right.
it's things like that, right? Because we talked about it. The Avalanche are the best offensive team in the league. The Jets are the best defensive team in the league. There's not a lot separating these two teams. And when you break it down, and the big edges are in goal and on the bottom lines, as we talked about. So, I mean, I think it's really hard to see this series being a 4 or 5 game series. Obviously, the Jets have the extra home game. The goal isn't just to win game 1, it's to win both games, and then you go back to Colorado, and we know once you go up 2-0 on a team, that's the whole key, right? So I think it's very close, and I'm picking the Jets. I mean, I'll skip ahead here. I'm taking the Jets in 6. I almost want to take the Jets in 5, but my confidence level
that's confidence. I mean, that's confidence in spades there, Mr. Ginsburg.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the end of the season, but I mean, it was the previous 30 games where the Jets were a 500 team, right? So, I mean, this is I'm not saying that, like I said, I'm not saying that the Jets are going to sweep the Avalanche, but I think the season series, there is something to be said. I think the Jets match up well against the Avalanche. I think the Avalanche have a lot of trouble with the Jets' speed and depth. And now that you've put in Toffoli and Monahan, I mean, I like that second line better than I like the Avalanche second line of Middlestat, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen, right? Like, it's a good line, but I just think I like the Jets' top 6 better than the Avalanche. And we talked about special teams, and we don't have a Cale Makar, right? So the Avalanche have the edge on defense when you throw in Devon Taves, Josh Manson. Caleb Jones is the defenseman we should mention that's going to play if Sam Girard can't play. But so the Avalanche are a dangerous team too. I just think that the Jets right now are, the way they're constructed, they can easily beat them in a 7-game series.
You talk about the bottom pair for the Avalanche, and it's Jack Johnson and Caleb Jones. That is exposable, would be the word that I would use there. Now, you could probably say similar about the Jets bottom pair. You can probably say that about most bottom pairs in the NHL, to be perfectly frank. But Jack Johnson, veteran defenseman who's been through every war imaginable in the league. Caleb Jones, usually been a 6, 7, 8 guy. That's where he's probably best suited for. So that's an area, an opportunity for the Jets to come in and be able to sort of take some advantage of, Dave. I think they have to be saying there, with any of our forward lines against that deep pair should be able to grind them pretty well, should be able to cycle on them pretty well, because that is certainly not the strongest deep pair that I've ever seen. And the Jets, third, fourth, any of the lines the Jets have, I think will really relish a matchup against those guys.
Well, and the difference, of course, being that if you said, well, you could do similarly to the Jets, which I don't think you can, but let's say you were able to say that, the difference is the goaltending, because that's where it's going to break down. And the Avs just don't have the goaltending from what we've seen. And again, I'm not going to pretend to be that this is Avs lunch, as we don't watch the Colorado Avalanche other than really when the Jets are playing them or we see them on the highlights. But you're not going to tell me that there's a lot of confidence in their net minding right now. And so, and
that's why a lot of people thought that the Avalanche were going to acquire a goaltender prior to the trade deadline, like a Jake Allen, Dave, for example, or a Capo Kakkonen.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Ezzy. And this point by CMAC is also a good one. Jets take the eighth least amount of penalties in the league. This will help us immensely against the fifth ranked PB from Colorado. Stay out of the box, boys.
You do
So,
have to
and
stay out of the
that would
box.
be the next point I was going to go to, is just this
Didn't I
idea.
just say that the Jets should stay out of the box? I'm pretty
I
sure I said
understand,
that.
but I am not saying you didn't. But I'm saying that I want to
That
reinforce.
applies to every single team in the playoffs. Stay out of the box, everybody.
It does, but I mean, again, when you're playing a top ranked power play, right, Ezzy, it's a well made point by CMAC, and I just think that you're right, Drew. Though, getting back to what you asked me, this idea of the exploiting the D pairs, and ultimately, I look at this Jets club, and it goes to me again that quiet confidence in that you anticipate that the top six is going to be your scoring lines, but you know that the Lowry line can produce. They've all produced, right? They're all having significant years. The fourth line, and you mentioned this. You had Vlad Domestikov as your second line center for part of this season. I think maybe a first line winger in a moment. Alex Iafallo was up on the top line. So I think you're going to have a lot of guys who just can play that playoff style, right? You got guys who have a lot of experience. Again, not a lot of cup experience. The only guys who have won, of course, are Tyler Toffoli and Laurent Brossoit. Colin Miller's gone to the cup.
Miller,
he's gone to the cup with Vegas. He didn't win it, of course, in their first year against Washington.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you've got guys who have that experience, but you also have guys who have a lot of playoff experience. And this Jets team, Adam Lowry was asked about it yesterday in the media availability about, he and Mark Scheifele are the only two guys left from the series against Anaheim in 2015. And it's interesting because you look at that group and they were so much, obviously they're very raw. And that was one of the things we talked about back then when we were talking about the Jets and their chances against the Ducks. That was a very young forward group. Well, those guys are all veteran guys, right? Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Adam Lowry, all those guys have been through it. They have a lot of playoff experience, a lot more than they ever did. And so, again, like I said, I think despite the fact that Colorado are, the defending Stanley Cup champs from just 2 years ago, and they have some unreal talent, I think the depth of the Winnipeg Jets is what's going to be the difference in this series.
And not just the depth, right? The fact, Dave, that depth contributes. Like, obviously that's what you mean, but it's not like these aren't just like guys on paper. Like, these are like Mason Appleton had a career year, I believe, right? Did he have his career year? He tied his career year. And Nino Niederreiter missed some games. He's back. Like, the addition of Tyler Toffoli and Sean Monahan have worked out really well. Now these guys have to produce in the playoffs, right? So I think you're absolutely right. That is the biggest depth. I mean, if you want to simplify it, goaltending and forward depth are the slight advantage that the Jets have over the Avalanche. Like, the Avalanche are not a pushover. I know there's a lot of enthusiastic Jets fans that want to say Jets in 4. I just don't see that happening. Like, I see
Spency Jets in 3.
Exactly. Spency's that confident. I think Spency actually wants to take the Jets in 1. They're just going to give the Jets the cup after game 1. But no, I think this is going to be a great series. We should mention again, this is the first time that these two teams have ever played in the playoffs. So that's something, right? This is going to be very even. The Avalanche have way too many star players, and guys that, they're going to use that 7-0 loss as a little bit of extra motivation. You can't tell me that there's not a big difference in losing, 3-2 in that game versus 7-0. Like, they were embarrassed on home ice. And, we know that the Jets have won all 3 meetings between these two teams, right? So even if you don't put a lot of stock into that, right now, the Jets are the favorite, even if a lot of people aren't treating them as a favorite.
Let's go to break. I see Ted Wyman is getting set backstage. He's going to join us for more Jets and Avs talk. So don't go anywhere. Our comprehensive series preview continues. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, we're live. Come join us. Smash the like button while we go to break. Bottom of hour number 1. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you Saturday morning talking about the Jets and the Avalanche. We remind you tomorrow afternoon, the Illegal Curve pregame show prior to game 1 of the Jets and the Avs. We are going to be live downtown at City Place, 2nd floor in the food court. Come join us right around that 4 o'clock hour. We're going to get you set right in the heart of the action for the Jets and the Avs prior to puck drop at 6 p.m. We're pleased to welcome back to the program the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun. Comprehensive preview this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Comprehensive previews galore in the Winnipeg Sun, as he demonstrates there. Our good friend Ted Wyman joins us on the show. Teddy, good morning.
Good morning, fellas. How's everybody doing today?
We're doing fine.
Excellent.
Teddy. Thanks so much for joining us, Teddy.
What a time to be alive, Teddy.
You bet, Ezzy, and thanks for making sure we coordinated on the red shirts.
I was going to say, you guys organized that beforehand. You're both looking resplendent in red on this Saturday morning.
Good work.
Ted, obviously, here, Jets, Avs, the excitement is building. You can feel it in the air all throughout the city. It's permeating all the conversations. Is this sort of the, I started the show with this question, the classic matchup of strength versus strength, offense versus defense, put them together, let the two Titans run at each other and see which one at the end of the series eventually breaks down as the winner?
Yes. You said it, man. Yeah, I mean, it is neat though, isn't it? How you get the top offensive team in the NHL, the top scoring team, and the top defensive team matched up here in the first round of the playoffs. Don't get me started on how silly the NHL playoff structure is. You know, when you have a situation where, as just in 2018 with the Jets, where even if they get through this series, there's a good chance they'd face the number one team in the West when they're number two in the West. It just doesn't make sense. To tell Toronto Maple Leafs fans about it, they've been talking about it forever. But again, you end up with a situation here where you've got two really, really, really good teams meeting in the first round. Two, I think, of the top 8 overall in the NHL. That's that's probably not the way it should be. But anyways, it's a great matchup, guys. It really is. You can't really look too much at what happened during the regular season, obviously, because the Jets won all 3 of those games. They absolutely clobbered the Avalanche 17-4. It's not really something that the Jets ever want to think about, those games, because they've got to go forward here and just concentrate on what the Colorado Avalanche are and what the Winnipeg Jets are. And what the Colorado Avalanche are is a team with incredible firepower, with one of the leading scorers in the league and Hart Trophy nominee in Nathan McKinnon, with Mikko Rantanen had over 100 points, with Cale Makar, who's a 90-point defenseman. They are going to be tough to handle. And the fact is, you want to see a test for this Winnipeg Jets team that's been so good defensively all year long? Other than, say, McDavid and the Oilers, I can't think of a more difficult test than you're going to have to deal with here. They've shown they can do it so far during the regular season. Playoffs are a different matter.
I agree with you 100%, Ted. And I held up the Dead Trees version of today's Winnipeg Sun. And in your breakdown, you obviously touch on the goaltending along with all other areas of the game. And, this is a clear advantage that we've already discussed. And just the fact that, in Colorado, they're discussing Justus Annan and possibly getting the game 1 start, I think shows you just how short of a leash Georgiev has, right? And like, we know Connor Hellebuyck's on his way to winning his 2nd Vezina trophy, but it looks like Georgiev right now, his confidence is at an all-time low, not just against the Jets, but he had a really bad game against the Dallas Stars. He didn't have a very good game against the Vegas Golden Knights. They blew that lead, right? So it seems like that is not just an advantage, but a huge advantage. And that's not even looking at the forward depth or any other areas of the game.
Well, I agree with you 100%, Ezzy, except if we go back to 1 year ago, if we were sitting on this show the day before the Winnipeg Jets took on the Vegas Golden Knights, we would have said Winnipeg had a distinct advantage in goal in that series as well.
It's true.
Because it was Connor Hellebuyck, a tried and true Vezina Trophy winning goalie against career backup Laurent Brossoit. Well, how did that work out? Who was the best goalie in that series? And that's the issue that I have at all with Connor Hellebuyck. The Jets do have a distinct advantage. There's no question. And Hellebuck's been as good as he's ever been this season. And so it's a clear advantage. He should be the kind of goalie that can lead a team all the way to the Stanley Cup. But he hasn't really outshone his opponents in very many playoff series. I mean, he really hasn't. You think back to last year, wasn't as good as Brossoit. You think back to the time before that, he wasn't as good as Carey Price. You think back to the time against the Vegas Golden Knights, he wasn't as good as Marc-Andre Fleury, and against the St. Louis Blues, he wasn't as good as Jordan Binnington. So the fact is that track record exists. It's not to be alarmist, it's just true. But no matter what, I'm still taking the Jets in the goaltending matchup, based on how bad Georgiev has been, particularly and I don't know anything about Justus Annunen, but it wouldn't be the first time a team, brought
He's a
in
rookie,
guy
right,
and,
Ted?
and all
Like,
of a
not a
sudden
lot
he
of people
got,
know
hot
anything.
and caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
He's only 23 years
Well,
old. So
and sometimes those guys do things, right? Patrick Waugh, I'm not comparing him to Patrick Waugh, but it's happened. It's happened where rookies came in and did it. Binnington was one as well. And so you're taking Winnipeg all day long in that goaltending matchup because of who Connor Hellebuck is and his track record in the regular season. But it's just something you have to bear in mind when it comes to the playoffs. Again, I use the term, it's a different matter. It just is, even in the goaltending situation.
Ted, the Jets defense has been solid all season long. We know, obviously, like we talked about, the William Jennings, it's not just because of Connor Hellebuck. It's largely because of Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit. But of course, the team's defensive play in front of them has contributed to that a lot. One of the biggest X factors, I think, potentially in the series, especially if he can be a bit of a shit disturber, if you will, is Neil Pionk potentially, because we've seen a lot from Neil Pionk and there's been a lot of consternation about his play, but there's a lot of hope that he can be a disruptor against Nathan McKinnon. What do you think? Is he your biggest X factor? Because we know what you get with Josh Morrissey. You know what you get with Dylan DeMello. You know what you get with Brendan Dillon. But is Neil Pionk really going to be the biggest X factor for the Jets in these playoffs?
First of all, I just want to say how ridiculous it is that Laurent Brossoit doesn't get a share of the William Jennings trophy. I mean, I understand they have rules, 25 games, but I mean, he played a huge role. He had better numbers than Hellebuck in his 22 games that he played. Come on. That guy deserves that recognition, and I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, rant over.
Well, just, it's funny that Ted, just to clarify, I think it was 2016, same thing happened with the Capitals, where who was it? Only played 20. I think he played 24 games, and it was only Holtby who got the Jennings. So I wholeheartely agree with you. We talked about it yesterday. I was talking about with your colleague Paul Friesen, and it's clearly just a team award. It should just be for the team that allows the lead. You can put the goaltenders on there, but I mean to have this number, it's very arbitrary, and so I agree with you.
It really should. I agree. It should just say Winnipeg Jets. I agree.
Yeah.
Like, really,
it was Philip Grubauer, by the way, Dave.
Grubauer, there we go.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's your one rant there, and plus I ranted about the playoffs. Apparently, I'm grumpy this morning, so
that's okay.
But hey, it's not like the NHL is perfect. Like, they have some things that they don't do right, and I think the playoff structure is one of them. And we didn't know that much about this Jennings situation until now, and the Jets actually win it. But
it was never an issue for the Jets before.
No, it has never been an issue with the Jets before. That's no doubt. Hey, so you were asking about Neil Pionk, the favorite player of all Winnipeg Jets fans, right? Mm-hmm. Without doubt, a guy who takes an awful lot of heat on Twitter, or what's it called now? X. From a lot of the analytics guys certainly point to him not being very strong. A lot of fans have decided that he's the guy that they want to hate. But I still point to, they wanted to hate Johnny Oduya and Ron Hainsey too, and they went on to pretty good careers after they left Winnipeg. But Pionk is, I think what you're getting at, Dave, is he can be an X factor in that he really gets under the skin of opponents. And he's very good at that, and he already got under their skin because he hit McKinnon in the last game. Mm-hmm. And that was a perfectly legal hit, and it pissed the Avalanche off. How dare you hit our star? But you know what? If he's there and it's available and it's a legal hit, well, fine. I don't even understand why a guy has to defend himself for that. It's part of the game, but he can do that, and he can really get under your skin, and he hits better than you would expect for a guy his size. And of course, he's a pretty good puck moving defenseman. He's got offensive skills. He does have his shortcomings. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He's had problems. I thought he's had problems with the puck in the last week, even as the Jets are rolling along, winning every game. He's the one guy you notice that just seems to be sort of fumbling the puck all over the place, making not great passes, fanning on them, etc. So X factor could be that he's potentially a difference maker in the series. It also could apply. You could also say wild card, because you just don't know exactly what he's going to do. You don't know if he's going to be that really effective player or if he's going to hinder the Jets with his play. So, I was asked to pick an X factor on our latest episode of Jet Setting, and I took Adam Lowry. That's probably almost too obvious, but Adam Lowry is just such a good player in the playoffs, and he's such a well-built player for the playoffs, with his ability to win faceoffs, to shadow great players, to defend against top centers like a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid. His toughness, and he always seems to rise to the occasion and score big goals in those biggest of games. So that's my X factor. But I do think that's an obvious one. Other than Hellebuck, there's not one that's maybe more obvious to me than Adam Lowry.
Ted Wyman, Winnipeg Sun sports editor, is our guest this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the Jets and the Avalanche. Reminder, tomorrow, the Illegal Curve pregame show live at City Place, 4 o'clock. Then the postgame show follows the Jets and the Avalanche as well. Teddy, it was a year ago, give or take a couple days at this time, when the Jets bounced out in the first round to the Vegas Golden Knights, that Rick Bowness went on his memorable commentary about the Jets and their need to elevate come playoff time. Now, this year has been a tremendous success, and it's not worth rehashing, his comments, because that's probably, gone and been done with. But do you think that the players who are at the receiving end of that remember it and are going to use that maybe to channel that as a bit of as a reminder as to what it's going to take to succeed come playoff time?
Well, you'd sure hope so, Drew. You'd sure hope so, because he was talking to Kyle Connor, he was talking to Mark Scheifele, he was talking to Josh Morrissey, he was talking to all of the best players on this team, Nikolai Ehlers. He said, our best players didn't show up when we needed them to show up. So what is he going to be saying this year as they go in, Mm-hmm. You got to show up. You got to match the other team's best players. I mean, how much better was Mark Stone than every single one of the Jets in that playoff series, other than in one game? Or maybe, I think the Jets had 2 pretty good games in that series. There was a double overtime in there. But, it's pretty incredible how noticeable it was in the last game, especially. It's just, where are these guys? And that, of course, included Dubois. It included Wheeler, who are gone now. I do think it's a different room without those guys there. I do think that there was an awful lot of buy-in throughout this season to the structure and to the game plan that Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel and the rest of the coaches implemented. And if you can get them to buy in for 82 games, you'd think you could get them to buy in for a few more here in the playoffs. I've said this all along. When the Jets have been down this year, when they had that 6-game losing streak, it looked like the buy-in just wasn't there. And I mean, maybe at some point it's going to happen during the course of a season. Man, they won 52 games. You can't take that away from them. But when they had those sort of down moments, you just wonder, is it just really difficult to keep that up for such a long season? So the question is, can you put it down, boil it down and say, okay, well, this is only a 7-game series. We just got to buy in for every single minute of it. And I think if they do, and I think if the Winnipeg Jets, if you look at their lineup, you look at a forward group that has 13 players that had at least 10 goals. They got a 19-goal scorer who might not even play. They've got 8 defensemen who can play in the National Hockey League, and they've got one of the best goalies in the league. And if he were to, get hurt, they've got a great backup goalie. This is a team that is on paper very well suited to a playoff run here, but it doesn't matter if you're not buying in at the right time, if you're not adhering to that structure that they've created, if you get away from it, as they sometimes do, it's really hard to win, especially against a team with that kind of firepower from Colorado.
Ted, you mentioned the fact that the Jets might not have Cole Perfetti in their starting 12, 19 goals and 8 good defensemen. Get this in for Dave. They also have Kyle Capobianco, who was, I believe, second, right, Dave, in AHL defenseman scoring. So if it gets to that point, number 1 in AHL scoring. And, there's a guy named Ville Heinola, right? So Capobianco, if you really want to go down to the 9th and 10th defenseman, right, Ted? The Jets are set up not just to win this series, but to go on a long run. So I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think we're hyping this team up too much, right? 52 wins, Dave M has mentioned this. If you put in another couple wins during that 6-game winless streak, which obviously we can't go back into a time machine, but I mean, the Jets would have been close to a President's Trophy here. And obviously the President's Trophy is a jinx, so I don't know how much that matters. But the point is, there were only 3 teams that were ahead of the Jets in the standing. So I don't think that's not a fraud. That's not a fluke. And I wanted to ask you specifically, Ted, I know you and Scott talked about it on jet setting, how important you think the pressure game is, because yes, the Jets play better when they're in the defensive structure and managing the puck and all of that stuff. But to me, they're the most successful, and we're not going to get too technical here, but when you have the F1 getting in there and then F2 comes in, the Jets can be like killer bees. And that's what I thought they were against the Avalanche, against the Stars, against the Canucks, even though you had a lot of regulars out of that Canucks game. But to me, that's a key here. Like if you're seeing, Mason Appleton getting in there, Nino Niederreiter getting in there, and just not giving any of the Stars, the talented Stars defensemen like Makar, Taves. I mean, we know all the players, Manson, Sean Walker was a good trade deadline acquisition. Like, how key is that to you? Because that to me is when the Jets are playing the best, that's what they're doing. They're keeping the opponent on their toes.
Yeah, I mean, well, that all plays into just how important it is to keep the other team in its own zone. And the Jets have been fantastic at that lately. There's no doubt about it. And another guy I think's been a really good forechecker lately is Kyle Connor. He's always good at it, but he's more of a speed guy. So the question is, when it gets to the really heavy games in the playoffs, can he be as effective in that way? Well, that will remain to be seen. But he certainly has the speed to get in there and really jar some pucks loose and make plays. So obviously that's very important. It's a part of the Jets' identity. They have to be good at that. They have to be good at forechecking. They have to be good at cycling. I think at times this season, when I was looking at that team at its best, I was saying, look how long the Lowry line or the fourth line, whatever iteration of it was at the time, look how long they just cycled the puck in the offensive zone. They're not even necessarily getting scoring chances, but they're just holding on, wearing that defense down and keeping the other team out of the Winnipeg zone. I mean, that really was working very well. And when the Jets are playing their best, you see that a lot. And that starts with forecheck. So, I think you've got a lot of pieces that can be very valuable that the Jets have in their arsenal. It's just a matter of putting them together in these games at the right time, not letting the moment get too big. One thing that I find it's going to be interesting, it just popped into my head here, but the fact that everyone's really excited about the whiteout, about the Jets getting home ice advantage and having this opportunity to start at home and have 4 games in the series at home. When was the last time they won in front of a whiteout?
Game 1 against the Golden Knights back in did they beat St.
No,
Louis?
I think it's 7 straight losses, I think, against at home, I think.
Well, there were some white towels on the chairs when they beat Edmonton.
Seltzy was there for a win. Bud Light Seltzy, remember?
Seltzy was there for a win. Good, Ezzy.
Well, we were there, Teddy. We were there. Just there were no fans.
Yes.
Or there were 500 fans.
I was going to say, yeah, you weren't wearing a white suit, Dave. I know you so well. I know all your suits. There's no white suits.
There's definitely not a white suit. That's true.
He would look good in it, though. You can rock it, Dave.
No, Ted, it's funny. I was going to ask you about the whiteout, so that leads into it nicely. Like, how much of an X factor do you think that can play? I mean, you just touched on it a little bit, so I think I know your answer, but just the idea that it just seems to me that this fan base, rightfully so, was jaded after last year. And Drew kind of touched on that with Rick Bonus's comments. And I think that, without the Hellebuck and Scheifele signing, there was a lot of consternation throughout the summer as to what it was going to look like. Then you get them. And even when they started to roll, there didn't seem to be a lot of belief. Fans believe in this team right now. It just seems like belief is at an all-time high if you can measure belief in a team. So I guess what I'm saying is, do you think that it just seems like there's more anticipation, and I'm just wondering what kind of feedback you're gaining. I know you guys just did your playoff poll in the Winnipeg Sun. So what kind of feedback did you get from that in terms of the fan base and sort of how you guys were able to measure it?
Yeah, the feedback I got from it is that there's a pretty positive view of this team among the fan base. Absolutely, you're right. And look at it, man. They were not being able to attract fans for much of the early part of the season. And then what did they end on? 10 straight sellouts or something like that? Or, I don't remember.
No, it wasn't 10 straight, but it was
10 sellouts in the last 24 games or something like that.
Yeah, it was like almost one every 2 games.
But they really did start
they sold
to attract
tickets.
more fans at the end of the
Yeah.
season. They became a hotter ticket. I mean, there's clearly that, I think, correlates to belief, as you said, Dave. Winnipeg fans do like to see their team do well. And they don't like to be pushed around, which I feel like maybe they felt like they were last year just by a team that, put like the only pushback that came from the Jets in that playoff series against Vegas was towards Rick Bowness when he, spoke out in the media and said that they didn't have any pushback. And that was kind of an embarrassing thing. And I don't think people liked it. I really don't. And I think a big part of the difference, again, not to crap all over Blake Wheeler, but I think his time as the voice in the locker room was done. And him being out of there, I think, has been valuable for the Winnipeg Jets to have new voices leading the way. Even if he wasn't captain last year, there was an awful lot of players at the end of the season said, well, he's my captain. Yeah. So if he's your captain, what are the other guys doing bothering wearing NEAs, right? So there was discord. And I just don't think fans like that. So there was disappointment. They showed it in not buying tickets. And now they're getting back on board. But I will say this, you talk about that whiteout situation. Clearly, I do not think that really gives the Jets an advantage. It doesn't. I mean, if it did, you'd have seen them win more games in the last 3 or 4 series. It's not been that X factor that they hoped it would be. I'm sure they love playing in front of those fans, and I'm sure they love playing in that atmosphere, but I just don't think it's been making a difference. What is going to make a difference for the Jets that gives them an advantage in this series, in my opinion, as well, is that they won 25 games on the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, they can win at home. They had 27 wins at home. They won 25 on the road. They can do that. Colorado was a far better home team than it was a road team. And that, in my mind, that kind of balance that the Jets have. Again, I didn't even put it in my intangible section in that beautiful newspaper that you held up before, but I should have, because that is an intangible.
Have you considered making Ezzy the face of the Winnipeg Sun as just a model? Have you considered that as an option to boost some sales?
No.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure that's good. Teddy, let me ask you this one, and it's quite, since Gabe Vilardi returned to the lineup, so Gabe Vilardi returned to the lineup after missing that month of action. He returned on March 30th for the Winnipeg Jets. Since he returned to the lineup, and I just want to pull up my stats here, make sure I have them accurate, the Jets' power play is clicking at 13th best in the league, and the penalty kill, not that he necessarily has a huge role on that, is 9th best in the league. Can you the special teams has been such a conversation point all season long, and over the last 3 weeks with Gabe Vilardi back, it's been a strength of the Jets rather than a weakness. How much of a factor, how much of a deciding factor do you think that special teams will play in this first round series?
Well, over the course of the season, there's no question that the Colorado Avalanche have better special teams on both sides. Mm-hmm. And as we've mentioned before, they have Makar, Rantanen, and McKinnon. They're all going to be out there on that power play. I don't think the Jets are going to be able to shut that power play down completely. They're just going to have to limit it as best they can. On the other side, their power play with Gabe Vilardi on it is completely different from their power play when he's not there. I mean, they tried Toffoli in that down low spot when Vilardi was out, and he just wasn't able to do the same thing. And I had a great chat with Gabe Vilardi last week, and I was really impressed with him because he talked about how important it is, how much his whole life has kind of led him to this situation where he can make great plays in a small space in front of the net there. Like he said, he spent all of his youth basically working on that very kind of thing. And even though the coaches and his parents were saying, get in the gym if you want to get anywhere, and he was like, nah, I hate the gym. And he went back and worked more on his hands. And look how good those hands are. I mean, the number of different ways that he's either scored or set up goals from that spot this season, little pass, into the middle to Monahan, through the legs to Kyle Connor on the other side, through the legs to score off the far post, just wrap it around quickly and stuff it through. And they're giving him the room, and the fact is, if they do decide to put somebody on him more, then someone else is going to be open for the big shot. So I just think not only on the power play, I think Gabe Vilardi's been a really good player for the Jets this season, guys. I mean, I think he played 45 games. If he plays 82, you're probably talking about close to 40 goals.
Sure.
And If that's not a good return for Pierre-Luc Dubois, I don't know what is.
Ted Wyman, our guest this Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Teddy, we always appreciate your insight. We always appreciate your time. It's going to be a doozy of a series. The Winnipeg Sun has it covered in its entirety. You can pick up the Sun as he's holding it up there. We'll look forward to all your coverage. We look forward to seeing you around the rink. It's going to be a fun one starting tomorrow evening. Enjoy it. We'll see you again soon, buddy.
All right. Love the plugs, guys. Off to the Iceplex for some practice right away. We'll probably see you there, Dave.
There you go. Thanks,
Cheers,
Ted.
Ted.
We'll
Thank
see
you.
soon. There he goes. Ted Wyman joining us this morning from the Winnipeg Sun to talk about the Jets and the Colorado Avalanche. When we come back, I want to talk about that special teams matchup because I think that's sort of why I finished off with that. It'll lead us into that on the other side of the break. Way more on the Jets and the Colorado Avalanche all morning long. Craig Button at the bottom of the hour, and of course the Illegal Curve pregame show prior to Game 1 tomorrow, live downtown at City Place in the food court on the second floor, and of course still streamed live here on all of our social media channels as well. Don't go anywhere. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is up next. We're live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years. And the Cup will stay south of the border. Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on this Saturday morning. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Fun Saturday so far. Lots of 420 talk going on. Can't figure out why that's the case.
Get James a cigarette.
Okay, James needs a cigarette. That's fine. What the hell do I know is going on? It's a wild and wacky Saturday morning. Everyone's excited, getting ready for the pregame show tomorrow, 4 o'clock. And, of course, Jets and the Avs. And then, of course, comprehensive postgame coverage with us on the Illegal Curve postgame show following Game 1 tomorrow night. That'll be right around, let's say, the 8:30, 8:45 mark. Of course, if there's overtime, that changes the schedule completely. Want to remind everybody, next Friday night, so 6 days from now, Game 3 of the Jets and the Avalanche. The first road game, we're at Boston Pizza on Taylor. It's the Illegal Curve watch party. It's the Illegal Curve live post-game show. So tons of opportunities in the next week to see all of us live and in person. Please kindly don't run away screaming if you do so. But we do want to remind you that we're going to be at City Place before games 1 and 2, and then we'll be at Boston Pizza for game 3. So plenty of live on location activities of the Illegal Curve post-game show and pre-game show. And here you go. Marcy Lee, please give a shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage. They moved them yesterday and they were fabulous. 5 stars. We agree, Marcy Lee. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is 5 stars. They've been a proud supporter of us here at Illegal Curve for so very long. Thrilled that you had a great experience with them as well. So big shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage for their support of Illegal Curve and their support of Marcy Lee during their move yesterday. Before the break, I mentioned I want to talk about the special teams battle, because if you look at it over the length of the year, it's one-sided. The Jets special teams, were a problem all season long. How many times did we say on this show, 5-on-5 play for the Jets has been terrific, but the special teams has been letting them down. Not just us.
And then the power play started doing well, and then the 5-on-5 play started to struggle. But now it's evened out. Obviously, that's where you're going with this, Drew, right? And if I can just step in here quickly, I don't think it's as big of an advantage as some people think. I think you would give the Avalanche an advantage, but especially, like you said, Drew, the numbers over the last, especially during this winning streak, right?
The last,
the power play
Velarde's back in the lineup.
Exactly. Gabe Vilardi is clearly an essential piece of that first power play unit, right? Obviously, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey, they're important pieces as well. Tyler Toffoli, since being acquired from the Devils, he's been a key piece on the power play. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it, guys. We can analyze this Jets Avalanche series for not just 2 hours. We could talk about this for 10 hours. And the Jets don't have a Nathan McKinnon, a Mikko Rantanen, or a Cale Makar. They just don't have those guys. These are, the la creme de la creme. These are 100-point players. In McKinnon's case, 140-point player, right? So the Jets just don't have that. But just because they don't have that doesn't mean that they also don't have an explosive power play. And yeah, I agree with Teddy Wyman, who said last segment, he's just a wizard, Vilardi, in front of the net. He's an option to distribute the puck, but we know with those hands, he can pull it in and, wrap the puck around or roof it top corner, right? So I do think that the Jets are at a disadvantage with the Avalanche, but I also think, the penalty kill has steadily improved, right, Dave? So the Jets don't take a lot of penalties. Obviously, that's going to be a key for the Jets. They're not going to want to take 5 or 6 penalties. You would rather they take a couple or 3, right? So I do think it's going to be a factor, but I'm not as worried about the Jets power play as I was around the midseason, because they've been at a much higher clip. And yeah, Gabe Vilardi's got a huge part of that, but I also think, Kyle Connor's a shooting option. Mark Scheifele's a shooting option. When Nikolai Ehlers is out there, they have, guys that can tip the puck. We know that Morrissey and Pionk. Yeah, exactly. Sean Monahan. I haven't really talked about him, in this segment, right? So I do think it's an advantage, but I think it's maybe exaggerated how big of an advantage that is, Drew.
Worth pointing out, Dave, before you jump in here and address that question, is that in that same time frame, since March the 30th, which is when Gabe Vilardi returned for the Jets, the Colorado Avalanche penalty kill has been 28th in the NHL at a success rate of 65%. Now, not to say that the Avs penalty kill is going to continue to be that poor, because that's terrible, but the Jets PK has improved over that last 3-week period. And again, we're just cherry picking, we're moving targets, and we're cherry picking dates and everything along those lines. The Avs penalty kill as of late has struggled immensely. Their power play has been fine, as you would expect. Their power play has been 12th in the league, so we're sort of next to the Jets at 13th, but their penalty kill has bottomed out significantly.
Well, and let's focus on the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll get to the Avs in a second. But I think what was the biggest kind of point of contention we talked about in terms of special teams was the need for it to be just average. You didn't need to have a top 5 special teams in order to be a Stanley Cup champion, but you did need to get into that mid-range. And so, look, they've improved, and of course, it correlates to the return of Gabriel Velarde. There's no question about it. What he's been able to do with the confidence they have when he's out there. And it's not just obviously PB1, PB2 has also had some success, but there's just, it's fairly indisputable that you can see what Velarde brings to this hockey team. So that's significant, but you also can't be reliant on just one person, right? You can't become a one-trick pony. And if Gabriel Velarde isn't there, then, then suddenly you don't have anything. But now taking it to the Avalanche, Drew, it's certainly a factor, right? Because while you are your record is who you say you are, and you look at the totality of your season, what you did. I mean, think about it. If we're discounting what the Jets did against the Avs, just, in the recent time, how much are you going to factor in what happened 6 months ago? Sure. You're not really. We're not thinking about games that happened in October or November or December or even January or February.
We're not putting a lot of stock in them, right? They happened, but we're not saying that.
Of course,
what happened in that game.
Well, what they did was they created a foundation of how your team plays, and so that's important. But again, ultimately, you really want to. You could call it recency bias, but you want to look at what your team has done in the last little bit, because that's probably more reflective of who they are as a team right now, with all the tools that they built up through the years. So for me, you do look at that and you say, yeah, it isn't as big a discrepancy as it may appear to be on paper, because of how bad things were for the Jets power play and penalty kill wise to begin the season. And so because of that, despite that, their 5-on-5 play was exceptional. They overcame, and they don't take a lot of penalties, as we highlighted earlier, right? So when you don't take a lot of penalties, that's obviously it's a good thing, because your PK wasn't that good. But ultimately, like I said, I think they've turned something that was a disadvantage into something that it's at least not killing them, and that's significant.
And I think that's a huge factor, is that the Jets, they don't have to come out and, assuming their 5-on-5 play stays at the level that it's been at for the majority of the year. And by and large, the 5-on-5 play has been solid. Yes, there were the blips, and those certainly can't be discounted entirely. But I think those blips, as we've seen at this point, after 82 regular season games, those blips are more just a natural function of the ups and downs of a season, rather than something that is a glaring weakness that is going to be a huge cause of concern. I think I'm safe in saying that. But from the perspective of the special teams now, if they can just get that baseline, just average, all of a sudden what seems like a huge advantage for the Colorado Avalanche isn't as significant as the prognosticators and some of the analyses would have you believe, because of you can't say Gabe Velarde strictly, but what his presence does there for the Jets power play is a significant one in making it that much more dangerous, because the options are galore when he's controlling things down at the goal line, like we've seen.
Special teams, just like goaltending, just like forward depth, just like D depth, are just a part of the game, right? But you're absolutely right, Drew. The Jets don't have to score, don't have to, convert on 60% of their power plays in order to win the series. The power play just can't let them down throughout the course of the series. So if they don't get a goal in game one, then hopefully they'll get one in game two, that type of thing, right? So the power play has been a lot better, and you're both right. Velarde has played a big role in that. I also think too, guys, like at the end of the day, if the Jets are going to win the series, the Scheifele, Connor, Velarde line will have to be better than the McKinnon, Rantanen, and Drouin line. Like, just simply put. And I realize that.
Do you think
Jets
can be though?
Well,
that's pretty. Like, to let me just stop.
Yeah, I think they can be. Yeah.
So you're saying that if Scheifele, so for the Jets to win the series, Scheifele, Velarde, and Connor have to outplay the McKinnon line, not just sort of play it relatively even, but they have to be better than them?
Well, yeah, well, at the very least even. Again, Drew, like, this is just my opinion, right? Like, sure. I think, at the end of the day, we can quantify it after the series is over, but the difference is the Jets have more of a kind of a 1A, 1B situation as opposed to the Avalanche and their second line. That's Casey Middlestat, Val Nichushkin, and Lehkonen. And that's a good line. And Jared Bednar would love to have the McKinnon line versus the Scheifele line at home, but because the Jets have last change, that the Jets are going to want the Scheifele line away from the McKinnon line. So for all the talk, look, Adam Lowry, Rick Bowness is going to put Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton up against the McKinnon line every chance he can. We know that, right?
No question.
But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, which line on the Avalanche, if McKinnon's not going to get all those matchups against the Scheifele line, like, are you expecting Middlestat, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen to shut down that line? Are you expecting it to be Ross Colton, Miles Wood, and Zach Parise? What I'm saying is, I don't know if the Avalanche have enough depth to shut down both of those lines, right? So if the Scheifele, Connor, Velarde line guys isn't contributing a lot at 5-on-5, and let's be honest, they've had trouble at times 5-on-5, not just at times, many times contributing at 5-on-5. A lot of their offenses come either on the power play or maybe it's one player on that line that's clicking. But the Ehlers to Foley Monahan line has been so good since the Jets acquired Toffoli. So to me, that's kind of the difference there. It's not just one versus one. It's the top two lines versus the Avalanche top two lines. And then obviously you're not going to take away anything from, the contributions from the bottom lines for either team, because not just looking at it from, one series perspective, like if you're any team that goes on a long run is going to get contributions from their third and fourth lines. It's just going to happen. Like, you remember those Tampa Bay Lightning teams that won the cup.
Well,
how big a role, like guys like
important.
Alex Killorn and Yanni Gourde and Anthony Cirelli, like those types of players, right? But I do think that is a huge advantage, right? Like, you look back to that cup winning team from a couple of years ago, they had Nazem Kadri and Gabe Landeskog. And it looks like Gabe Landeskog is not going to be an option for the Avalanche in the playoffs. It looked like a couple months back he might be. So that's not going to happen. There's no Mark Stone, coming back for the Colorado Avalanche. So Jets fans don't have to worry about that. But I do think that forward depth for me is a bigger advantage for the Jets than the special teams is for the Avalanche.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with, because the Jets special teams has improved and the Avalanche depth is what it is. There's not another reinforcement coming for the Avalanche. Their 12 forwards are the ones that are well known and everybody knows, and they certainly went and they shored it up at the trade deadline. They did bring in reinforcements. They brought in Brandon Duhaime from the Minnesota Wild, but Brandon Duhaime is not going to be an offensive player. He is a grinder, physical, bleep disturber playing at the bottom of your lineup.
You don't have to bleep yourself, right?
I know I don't have to
on
bleep
radio
myself, but I thought I decided I'd bleep myself in this case, in case it's a Saturday morning. There might be some kids, instead of watching cartoons, they're watching us and thinking we're the cartoon.
Well, your shirt is a cartoon, so maybe that's what they're thinking. They're watching cartoons.
Exactly.
And boys, another guy that the Avalanche acquired, Yakov Trenin, he's got 12 goals. So I mean, that's not bad. But again, Vlad Nemesnikov is on the fourth line for the Jets. And when he's healthy, Morgan Barron, he had 12 goals, 13 goals. So again, we could go through these, we could go line by line by line, but at the end of the day, the biggest difference is, the Avalanche are top heavy, whereas the Jets have way more balance throughout their lineup, right? Like, you have guys on the third or fourth line that could easily step up into a top six role where, I don't see a guy like Brandon Duhaime, for example. If Brandon Duhaime is playing on your second line, all due respect, like, he's a good grinding forward. I would call him a grinder, like just an old kind of throwback. Like, he's a guy that can drop the gloves. He's physical. So, but it's still going to be close. At the end of the day, guys, there's only 3 points separating these teams. So again, I even if you're the biggest Jets fan, I think it's hard to envision a series in which it's only 4 games. So I repeat my pick. I'm going Jets in 6. But I could easily see the Avalanche winning the series just for the simple fact that McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar,
Well, that's why it comes. I mean, I think the Adam Lowry's presence in this series, Dave, is going to be so significant.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of people are noticing now just how good Adam Lowry has been this year. I mean, because he doesn't put up the flashy numbers. It's not like, he's on the score sheet, but, in that role, the third line, for how many years did we say that Adam Lowry is better suited as your fourth line center? And there was a lot of years we said that. His game has elevated this year, that he can play a third line center role, and you're not batting an eye about it. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that the fourth line depth for the Jets is way better than it's been in years past, and you're not trotting out some of the guys who frankly were really more AHL talent on your fourth line. So Adam Lowry as a third line center, when you have that support as a fourth with your fourth line, makes a hell of a lot more sense. But Lowry's game this year has been so on point, and his game has been so his, and again, drink, I'm going to say my favorite phrase, his attention to detail has been so impeccable that he's exactly what any team would be looking for in a shutdown third line center. So when he gets the opportunity to go up against MacKinnon, I do think that he's going to embrace that matchup. It's a damn hard matchup. Nathan MacKinnon is Nathan MacKinnon. We saw the hat trick that he had, 10 days ago against I think the Minnesota Wild, where it looked like he was playing in fast forward.
Nathan MacKinnon is a hockey thoroughbred. That's what he is.
The Jets can't let him be in that fast forward mode as easy, and it's way easier to say that than it is to actually shut it down. But, Adam Lowry, I think, is probably eagerly lining up for that challenge to see if he's able to mitigate the impact of Nathan MacKinnon. Nathan MacKinnon's going to have an impact on the series. There's no question about it. It's just, the Jets have to be focused on making sure that he doesn't single-handedly win the series for the Avs, Dave.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I suspect Lowry's dealing with something because he's been skipping a lot of morning skates and practices. But everybody's dealing with something. We know he took off game 82, but it just goes to show you how good he is, that even if he is playing with something, and again, every player is playing with something right now. There's no question about it. You're right, Drew. They're all dealing with bangs and bruises at the end of a 82 game season. You just can't not be. But you're right. I mean, his role is going to be significant because, oh, by the way, there's Nathan MacKinnon. Well, you're out. And he's relished that opportunity. And, I highlighted the comment just a few moments ago about, how Ezzy's boy, Jay Fresh Hockey, has him as a number 2 on the Selke. Yeah. That's high praise, right? I mean, this is a guy who's been pilloried, I think, for much of his career because stone hands this and this and that. But he's grown as a leader by wearing the C. We already know he was a leader on this team, but especially now that he's wearing the C, right, as in his first year, that comes with a lot of responsibility. He's handled those fantastically. I think, what was he named, the community award leader just for all of his role with the Toba Center and everything he does in the community here in Manitoba. So that's significant off the ice. And obviously his impact on it, Drew, is going to be big because he's being asked to do the unenviable job of shutting down probably the top 2 or 3 player in the NHL right now. So, that's your reward for a hard season, is to go out and shut down the best player on the ice for either team, really, individual player, I would say. So it's a tall task, but Nino Niederreiter and Mason Appleton, they relish the opportunity. You can see these guys, love playing together. We talked to Mason Appleton last week, and he was talking about this fact that this team has been together for probably 70 games this season, 75 games, whatever it's been. So obviously Nino Niederreiter missed the 5 games when he had the skate cut injury earlier in April, but this is a line that not just shutting things down, because you're right, Drew, we used to talk about them as a 4th line. If you can't contribute offensively, you can't be a 3rd line. In 3rd line in the NHL, you have to be able to contribute. You have to be able to score goals. They're not going to go out there and score as many as lines 1 and 2 boys, but if they're contributing offensively, they're holding the opposition's best to nothing or to limiting them to their opportunities. I mean, that's all you can ask. And Adam Lowry, he's going to be, Teddy Wyman said it in our last segment, what an X factor he's going to be for the Jets. Think about how many guys, Ezzy, have been X factor. We've mentioned as potential X factors for this Jets team. Again, speaking to that idea of depth.
Right. And there's going to be X factors for the Avalanche as well, right? Like Casey Middlestat is an X factor. Like, what you're going to get out of MacKinnon and Rantanen and Drouin. We've talked about it. The Avs are the top offensive team in the league. The Jets aren't going to be able to compete with that, right? We talked about it with Ted as well. When you're talking about you have to be able to have shift after shift, line after line, rolling those lines, and it's all about pressure, right? Like, so the Scheifele line comes out, has a good shift. That's followed up by the Monahan line. Oftentimes you see Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel use Lowry to start off a game. They set the tone with one of their good shifts. Even if it doesn't come with a grade A scoring chance, it's a possession game, right? Like the Avalanche are shoot the puck almost as much as any other team. I think they were, last time I checked, they were like 5th overall in shots. And so they have a lot of players. We know that they activate their offense, not just Cale Makar, but Devon Taves and Josh Manson, Sean Walker. Like, both sides, these are deep teams. Like, this is not a 1 versus 8 matchup where there's like 16 points separating the two teams. Like, these teams are close, and you have to give the Jets the advantage the way they've played down the stretch. The Avalanche were fluttering. Like Drew talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done themselves a huge favor. And if they hold on to the Avalanche, then they give themselves a chance at getting home ice advantage. But you combine the fact that they only got 1 point out of a possible 4 points in those back-to-back games against the Jets and the Avalanche. That's the only difference here, guys. So I go back to what I said before. I forget if that was just off air to Dave M before we went live, but you almost have to just take out how many points. This doesn't just apply to the Jets. It applies to the Florida Tampa series, or it applies to the Edmonton LA series, or any of the first round matchups. Just put the points away, put where they finished away, and just look at them as two teams in a best of 7 series, because there's not a huge advantage once you go in. It's really tough to quantify how much momentum carries over into the playoffs. But having said that, I mean, the Jets are playing probably the best hockey they've played, and that has a lot to do with beating top teams in the West. Dallas, Colorado, Vancouver. You're not as impressed against a Kraken team, but they didn't just win 8 games in a row. They beat some of the best teams in the Western Conference, right? So to me, it's going to be an unbelievable series. I can't wait for the puck to drop. I think that both of these teams, by the way, were knocked out in the first round. So both of these teams have a lot at stake, guys. It's not like the Avalanche are just happy to be in the first round of the playoffs. They were a buyer at the trade deadline. Both of these teams have Stanley Cup aspirations. And I think that's a narrative and a storyline here, that both of these teams, there's a lot to prove for both of these teams, because last year we know the Kraken handled the Avalanche. That was a huge upset. And then when you talk about the Jets Avalanche, that wasn't necessarily an upset. But the way the Jets played in the first game, right? They were really impressive in game 1, and then they just couldn't follow that through into games 2, 3, and 4.
Well, you talk about last year, and so the Jets are built in a very similar way that the Kraken were last year, with the depth. Now, I would argue that the Jets' best players are better than the Kraken's best players were last year. I mean, if you look at the Scheifele and the Ehlers, and
not even close,
right? So, and the depth of the Kraken is what was a big asset for them over the Avalanche, and that's similar for the Jets this year. There is a blueprint. And it's not a difficult blueprint to emulate for the Jets to be successful against the Colorado Avalanche. It was just done last year with a similarly built team that rolls 4 strong lines at you, that rolls 4 forward lines, one after another, after another, after another. Now, I would think that this Colorado Avalanche team is probably a little bit better than last year's team, just based on the addition of a Casey Middlestat. We haven't mentioned Sean Walker, addition of a Sean Walker who really, to be honest, hasn't been terrific since he joined the Avalanche, at the trade deadline from Philadelphia. But that's not to say that he won't find his game or anything. But there is definitely this story has been told before, just last year in the playoffs, and the Jets are going to certainly be looking to replicate what the Kraken did against the Avs, where wearing them down with the depth is a significant factor. I do want to say one other thing, talking about sort of the recency bias, and I know that I'm hearkening back to this March 30th date. Since March 30th, the Colorado Avalanche have given up 4.11 goals against per game played. Now, obviously, the Jets' 7-0 dominance is a factor in that, but you can see just how leaky the Avs have been defensively since that March 30th date. Since the Jets sort of went on their successful run, while the Avs have begun to be average at best, and at the same time, the Jets have been scoring 4.11 goals per game since that March 30th date, Dave. So it is there is some symmetry there in the numbers, in the numerology. You know how we love numerology here on this show, that the Jets' success of late is coinciding with the Avalanche struggles as of late as well. When we come back, more on this series. Our good friend Craig Button is scheduled to join us. We'll talk more on the Jets and the Avalanche. Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, comprehensive preview. We'll do it all again tomorrow, 4 o'clock, comprehensive Game 1 preview right downtown at City Place, 2nd floor. Join us there for that as well. Craig Button up next. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's Saturday morning. Commercial free from here till the end of the broadcast. We welcome you back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg talking all about the Winnipeg Jets and Colorado Avalanche. We're thrilled to welcome back to the program our very good friend Craig Button joins us now to talk more about the Jets and the Avs. Craig, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Yeah, always great to be part of this with you guys, and things are great. Yeah, the first day of the playoffs, and Winnipeg doesn't get started till Sunday, but I think there's excitement right across the Canadian markets, and as there should be. I mean, you and specifically in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Winnipeg, because these are all legitimate Stanley Cup contenders.
I noticed you left the team off there that's Canadian and in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, the only people that get excited about the Toronto Maple Leafs are the delusional Toronto Maple Leafs fans. How can you ever be excited about the Toronto Maple Leafs? I mean, and you know, this clip will show up. I hate the Leafs. Yeah, right. I hate the Leafs. Like, I mean, just give me a break. Anyway, the bottom line, there's not like I don't know how you can be excited about the Leafs, and I'm not saying that to be negative. It's just like they finished in third place in the Atlantic Division in a division that was supposed to fall down. To me, they got a lot of significant holes, and the path for them is not one that I think they can navigate successfully. And despite that, I think they can beat Boston, and I picked them to beat Boston. But sorry, I don't have them in the same category as Winnipeg, Edmonton, and I'm not sorry. The bottom line is I have nothing to be sorry about. I only tell it like I see it, and I don't see them as a legitimate Stanley Cup contender.
I love it. Craig, obviously, we're here to talk about the Jets and the Avs to start. I mean, on paper, a lot of people saying it's the closest of all the first round series, the strength of the Avs, their offense, the strength of the Jets, their team defense, their depth, their goaltending. You know, from your perspective, a guy who's watched the Jets all season long, watches the entire league, when you look at this matchup, you know, what do you see when you compare these two teams?
Well, let me take I'm not going to take a step back. I'm just going to, before I get to the matchup, I look at what I really believe. If you want to contend for the Stanley Cup, I think there's essential elements you need in your team. And I don't think the formula has changed. I think that, you know, people there's not one right way, but I think there are key elements that have to be in place. So let's start with the Winnipeg Jets. Key elements. Well, it goes without saying you need good goaltending. Well, the Winnipeg Jets have the best goaltender in the league, right? You need size, you need some length, you need some heaviness on the blue line. Okay, there's another check mark for the Jets. You need a clear-cut number one defender on the blue line. Check mark, Josh Morrissey. But a really good group. And then you look at the forward group. So I think you need size. I think you need speed. I think you need to be able to play on the walls, inside the dots, and really make life difficult. The Jets have another check mark there. You need four lines, check mark. You need players that can step in case of injury or you want to change the lineup, check mark there. You have an ability to have strength up the middle of the ice, check mark. So everything I look at with the Winnipeg Jets gives me every reason to believe that they're a legitimate, serious Stanley Cup contender. Is it easy to win the Stanley Cup? No, it isn't easy to win the Stanley Cup. You got to put all those things, but they're built. And when I think built the right way, they're built for success. Now you got to go out and play. And there's other teams that are built for success. I'm not suggesting that there aren't. But when you look at the Winnipeg Jets and what Kevin Cheveldayoff and the Jets group have done since they were eliminated from the playoffs last year in Vegas, very different scenario entering this year's playoffs than the one that entered and exited last year's playoffs. So now when you ask me about the matchup, so yeah, I know McKinnon's a great player. I know Rantanen's a top-notch player. I know McCarr's a top-notch player. Their goaltending, subpar. They don't have the same level of blue line, I think, completeness. Number two. Number three, they don't have the forward depth. They don't have the forward grind that can really get you on balance. So people might say it's close. I look at this, and I'm not going to say it's going to be easy for the Winnipeg, but I see the Winnipeg Jets in so many key areas to have the advantage on the Colorado Avalanche. I'll finish with this. In 5 games from March 30th through last Sunday, the Colorado Avalanche played Nashville, they played Edmonton, they played Dallas, they played Winnipeg, and they played the Vegas Golden Knights. Georgiev started every single one of those games, every single one of them. He didn't complete 2 of them. He didn't get through the first period in one of them. He didn't get through the first minute of the second period in another one. His save percentage in those 5 games against quality teams, .829. It is a matchup in the net that is so overwhelmingly in the favor of the Winnipeg Jets. And I don't think the Colorado Avalanche can overcome it, because if they think they're going to go beat the Jets 7-5, not happening with Connor Hellebuck and the way the Jets play defense.
Craig, I wanted to ask you something. I thought it was a good question that Drew asked first hour, and it's really a hard question to answer because you can't quantify it. How much? I guess we can quantify it if the Jets end up winning the series, but we know the Jets defeated the Avalanche 3 times. 17-4 were the goals for and goals against, but that's 7-0 victory, especially. Like, I think I imagine you were surprised. Like, I think nobody would be surprised if the Jets won that game 4-2. But it was 7-0, and the game was over, not just after 2 periods, but after 1 period. Like, how much stock, not just do you put in that, but how much stock should anybody put in that in terms of how long they think this series is going to go? Because I think this series I'm taking the Jets in 6, which is not a big, revelation, but I think I just can't see this being less than a 6-game series.
And I concur with you, because the Colorado Avalanche are like, they're not like a team that isn't capable. Don't get me wrong here, and certainly but think about a team getting it to 6 games and losing. That's a .333 winning percentage, like that. Like, so, and when we look at it, so what can everybody like, and you, that game, you're right, it was over after Adam Lowry scored the 4th goal in that game in Colorado. They came out in the second period, and then they just, it was kind of, if it was curling, they would have shook hands after the second period, and everybody would have gone their own ways, because the third period was just about, let's just get out of here unscathed. We don't want to nick, we don't want to scratch. And I was thinking, but let's understand how they were able, and I'm going to back-to-back games, okay? When you look at the Dallas Stars, who are a top team, and then you look at the Colorado Avalanche, who are a top team, I'll put them in that top category. The Central Division was unbelievable this year, and I think the best division in hockey was in the Central Division. And you look at what Nashville did coming up, so they went into Dallas, and they gave Dallas this much, 0. Not Dallas never, the only, like, I if I recall correctly, I think I had 4 scoring chances for the Dallas Stars, and they were all created off of Winnipeg Jets mistakes. Not just a turnover here, a bad play there. Dallas created nothing on their own. Then they go into Colorado, and it was exactly the same thing. Colorado couldn't get started. Dallas couldn't get started against a Winnipeg Jets team that just said, we're going to bottle you up. We're going to press against you. And so it was the way they got the 4-0 lead. It was the way that they played and showed that, like, you can come at us with all the skill you want, but if you can't get your engine started, how are you going to get moving? And they didn't allow the Dallas Stars or the Colorado Avalanche to get started. I believe when the Winnipeg Jets are playing to the, I don't want to say to the best of their abilities, but because games are going to swing. I mean, there's good teams. But when they're playing to their strengths, they become a team that's really, really difficult to defeat. And then, again, I'm going to go back to Connor Hellebuck. Then if you do get a chance against them because of something you've done or something that the Jets have done, you got to deal with him.
Craig, got to ask you about a guy you know well. We've just saw him play his 700th game in the NHL. I've watched him since he grew, since the Jets drafted him in the 3rd round back in 2011. Now, after spending the year as the captain, what have you seen in terms of what Adam Lowry's done, in terms of his growth, and in terms of just how he's going to be the big driver here in terms of shutting down the opposition?
Okay, so I'll reveal this on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday. I'm a voter for NHL awards, and I had Adam Lowry in my top 5 for Selke Trophy. I think I think he's been that good as one of the best defensive forwards in the National Hockey League. So, just sharing that, our voting, our votes get tabulated and our votes get made public at the end of the season. But sharing that. So that's how much I think of him as a defensive player, and put him in the category of one of the best in the league. I think Adam Lowry is just he's just such a phenomenal leader in the way that he plays, in the way that he refuses. He has this comportment of, I am not going to accept that we are not going to give our very best. I am not going to accept that I am going to not do everything I can, and by extension, help my teammates do, that we give ourselves the best chance to win. I am going to be accountable for our team's play when we're not good. And I think if this guy wants to coach or manage when he's done, his intelligence is exceptional. His understanding of the game is exceptional. He's got a fire in him that I think, again, I'm going to go back to Stanley Cup winning teams. Stanley Cup winning teams need players like Adam Lowry on the thing. The fact that he's the captain is something that I think was natural. And I think it was absolutely the right move that allowed the team. He's beyond respected by the Winnipeg Jets and the players and everybody. It's across the league how much respect Adam Lowry has. And Adam Lowry doesn't take anything less than 100% effort lightly. You better dig in. And the respect that he has and the way he plays the game. I use this, and this is just my own way of putting things. And it's a compliment I give players. And Adam Lowry gets his compliment. He doesn't need to score to help your team win. And I know people go, oh, he hasn't scored in this long. Who cares? I don't care, because what he does is so significant in the game. And the beautiful thing about Adam and watching him grow and develop is that when you need a big play, a big face-off, a block shot, a goal, a key play on a forecheck to create a goal, Adam Lowry, he's one of those players that finds his way into those mixes. And to that end, I was fortunate. I think one of the best leaders, and I was around some great leaders in my time with NHL teams. One of the best leaders I was ever around was Mike Keane. Mike Keane won 3 Stanley Cups. He was instrumental to our team in Dallas winning as a leader. He works for the Winnipeg Jets, obviously, everything but the Winnipeg Jets.
He doesn't like my 3. I can tell you right now, Craig, he doesn't like my 3-star picks for the Moose often. I often get a lot of slack from Mike Keane about my 3-star picks at Moose games. I can tell you that.
Well, Dave, just before I finish, I said, pick better stars then. Because if you're not, if Mike's giving you a hard time, you're not doing the right thing.
Do better, Dave.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, Dave. Because that's exactly, if Mike didn't agree with you or Mike didn't like what you were doing, right? It was the same thing in the dressing room. It's not good enough. And it didn't matter who you were. And Mike, played the game in so many important areas that helped you win. And I think Adam Lowry does exactly the same thing. I can't help but think that Mike Keane doesn't have a big smile knowing that Dave Lowry or Adam Lowry is a part of the Winnipeg Jets, because that's how I see Adam, and that's the accolades that I give him. I often joke on the Jets broadcast and everything, but I have a man crush on Adam Lowry.
Craig Button, our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the Jets and the Avalanche. Game 1, of course, goes tomorrow evening, 6:00 in downtown Winnipeg.
Craig, who did you take for the Hart Trophy? Just kidding.
Kucherov.
You want to explain?
100 assists, first winger to get 100 assists in a season from day one to the end of the season. He was right on top of his game. I thought he was brilliant, right? And that team struggled in the first 20 games. They didn't have Vasilevsky, finishes over 50 points ahead of the next leading scorer on his team. If they didn't, I mean, everybody's going to look at it. It's not a clear scenario with respect to how you look at it, but most valuable player to his team. And the other players, I mean, I had McKinnon 2, I had McDavid 3, Matthews 4, and Panarin 5. I'm not going to say they weren't valuable to his team, but I think the most valuable player to his team was Nikita Kucherov. And, you watch the way he performed. And I go from day one, he was an instrumental part. So, it's going to be an interesting vote this year, and it's going to be interesting, but that's who I felt was the most valuable player in the National Hockey League this year.
Well, let me piggyback on that. This Jets Avs series. Take Connor Hellebuck out of being an option for this answer. Which of the Jets skaters, from your perspective, needs to be their most valuable player for them to succeed against the Avs in this first round playoff series?
Yeah, It's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. It's difficult to pick one player, right? Because, the way the way the game is played, like you need Josh Morrissey to be really good. So, and I'm not worried about anybody that I haven't mentioned. I'm not worried about them not being capable of doing it. I'm going to turn right to Mark Scheifele. And I think Mark, I think Mark can be an instrumental part of contributing in so many different areas. The season's long, and there's times and stretches during the season where you might not be dialed into the same deep. That goes for all players. That doesn't. But Mark Scheifele, when he is zeroed in, and I'll say zeroed in on the prize, he can be a force. With his skating, with his offensive play, with his size, with his physical play, with his defensive play. You watch those games, and I'm talking about the games we just talked about, Dallas, Colorado. You watch, I was doing stuff on Mark Scheifele, the way he's supporting the play defensive zone, below the puck, offensive zone, the forecheck, the ability to be above the puck, everything that says, I remember Wayne Gretzky making this comment many years ago. The regular season, you can take some chances, you can do some things to try to create offense. You can maybe just kind of take a little bit more of a risk offensively, but come playoff time, you got to recognize when and where you can't do it. And I think over this last stretch of games, Mark Scheifele has absolutely done that. And I think that with his size, with his power, with his skill, with his will, that he can become a really, really, and let me just say, not can become, I think he will be. Go back to that series in 2021. He was outstanding. And obviously we know what happened in game one with Jake Evans, the big hit, the suspension and everything. Losing Mark Scheifele was a real blow to the Winnipeg Jets. Thank you, Cap Obvious. I know, but I really and because here's why, to extend on that, because now Mark, Rick can play him anywhere. He can play him against McKinnon. He can play him here. He can play him there. That frees up Sean Monahan and that line now to be able to do things, the mix and match. And I think that there's going to be other players, and a good complete team effort is required. But to answer your question, I think Mark, when Mark's on top of his game, he's a superstar in the league.
Absolutely. And, I just wanted to get away from the Jets Avalanche series because, of course, there are 7 other series. We don't have time, unfortunately, to go through all of them, Craig. But if you were willing to, I would definitely go series by series with you. But obviously, the Jets and Stars, a lot of people think they're on a collision course, right, to play in the second round. And the winner of that series could very well win the Stanley Cup. What is your overall assessment of the Stars Golden Knights series? Because obviously the Golden Knights, they have not had the regular season that they would like. They probably would have liked to have been first or second in the Pacific as opposed to being in a wild card spot. Do you still have the Stars as a heavy favorite, or is this another series where, I could see the series going either way just because of the depth that the Golden Knights have, and then you throw in the return of Mark Stone at some point in the series, right?
I don't see it that way. I think if the Dallas Stars lose, it's a massive upset. I think the Dallas Stars are a top team. Their blue line, their forward group, and everything they've done this year. After the Vegas Golden Knights started out 11-0-1, 5 games over 500, middling would be kind to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. And I know we give the benefit of the doubt to the Vegas Golden Knights because they won the Stanley Cup last year. We look and, they had this injury, they had that injury, and everything. I get it. Well, guess what? I don't get to be able to say, well, if you had this, or if you did that, or if you didn't hit the crossbar, and forget what Bruce Cassidy's not impressed with the Vegas Golden Knights, and he's the head coach, and I'm not impressed with them. I think the worst thing that happened for the Vegas, I shouldn't say the worst thing that happened for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think that the Vegas Golden Knights, whether they were playing Edmonton or they were playing the Dallas Stars, were in over their heads. And and the Dallas Stars lost to the Vegas Golden Knights last year. Remember, they lost the first 3 games. Then they won 2 more, and then they ended up losing in game 6. I think that'll benefit the Stars knowing where it's at. But I see the Stars as a team that's better than the Vegas Golden Knights. Does that mean the Vegas Golden Knights can't find a form? I don't think it's going to be a whitewash. I don't think it's going to be easy for the Dallas Stars. But I'm not buying the Vegas Golden Knights. And my friends that work for the Vegas Golden Knights, will probably say, don't bet against VJK. Well, I'm not a bettor. I'm just saying I'm not picking you.
Craig, I know we want to talk about the playoffs, but I want to ask you about game 82 here in Winnipeg, because it was a significant one, because we saw some big prospects playing for the Winnipeg Jets in that game. Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov. What can that do? These guys have had excellent seasons with the Manitoba Moose. They were co-rookies of the year. They're both in the top AHL for scoring amongst rookies. Lambert, of course, moving to center after being a winger last season. But from your perspective, what can that do from a confidence perspective for prospects to get into your first NHL game, play an impactful role, and then moving forward, obviously try and have a big impact for the Moose in the playoffs?
Let me start with Brad. Brad was a very promising player, at 15, 16, 17. And now he's playing in the SM Liga. And he wasn't ready to perform at any level where he could be a contributor at that level. And so he suffered. I shouldn't say he'll speak if he suffered. His game suffered because he couldn't do the things that, you saw with the skating, the shot, the puck handling and whatnot. And then the Jets bring him over and they play him in Manitoba. I think what the Jets did, the best thing that ever happened to Brad Lambert is when the Jets sent him to Seattle. Mm-hmm. That was the catalyst for Brad to be able to now be able to use his skills. Because the longer you go without being able to use your skills and be productive, you start to now, they become diminished. And then your confidence becomes affected. And I think going to Seattle, they had a deep run. They win the Western Hockey League. They go to the Memorial Cup. I think that was instrumental for Brad. And he played center there last year. And, I've often looked at it and said maybe he's a better winger because of the speed, get him the puck. But, he's working his way to being a good solid center. Seeing him this year in the American Hockey League were real good signs of that. Now he comes back to the American Hockey League with confidence. He goes, oh, I can do this. Not wondering can I do this anymore? It's more, I can, not can I? And that's a big part of development. And now he comes back, has a real terrific season with the Manitoba Moose, gets a game in, deservedly so. And now he sees, okay, now that's only going to spur. This is just going to keep heating up for Brad Lambert. The confidence is going to keep growing, but it all goes back. And I think the Jets do a really good job of this, amongst the best in the league. They don't rush players along. They let them marinate, they let them grow, they let them get better. It doesn't mean you don't test them. I mean, I wouldn't have put him in the American Hockey League at the outset last year, but it doesn't mean that you don't test them there and see what he can do and everything. But ultimately, they set players up for success. And I think that's exactly what's happened with Brad. And I think there's every reason to be excited. Chibrikov has always been a really good offensive player. He's got natural gifts. He's got really good playmaking ability. He's got competitive. He's one of those what I call quiet competitors. If you think you're going to get an advantage on him, you're not. And I the game the other night, like he's trying to handle the puck on the first Seattle goal. He's trying to make a play on the puck, and it kind of gets swept off his stick. But he's right there, back there, trying to make a play defensively, understanding. The puck goes in the net. But then you watch what happens after that. I mean, he's battling for pucks. He had on the power play at the end of the first period. He was really good. He ends up scoring a goal and battle. He's a really good offensive player. So you think about Lambert, you think about Chibrikov. I even mentioned McGroarty and Barlow. I mean, like this
goal for Barlow last night, Craig.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did not know that. Thank you, Dave. I didn't check on that. I mean, I talk about Adam Lowry, like he's going to be in competition for Craig Button man crush voting because I have man crushes on Colby Barlow and Rutger McGroarty too. I'm telling you guys that and so Brad and Lambert and Chibrikov, real good, promising. I said if the present is any indication of the future, it's bright. I mean, I was talking about the game 82 and Barlow and McGroarty. I mean, they'll come in hot. These are really, really good that I think are difference makers. Like that's the other thing. I think they're difference makers. And I think, you look at what, Colby's been part of success. Rutger's been part of success. Brad has been part of. That's just going to feed into the idea that you can win. These players will help you win in the future.
Craig, last question for you. We know the impact that Monahan and Toffoli have had for the Jets since they were acquired, in and around the trade deadline. For Colorado, they acquired Casey Middlestat in that big deal with where Bowen Byram went to Buffalo. They acquired Sean Walker, it's on a similar time frame. What's the impact been of their trade deadline acquisitions from your perspective? We know how seamlessly Monahan has fit here in Winnipeg. Has it been the same for Walker and Middlestat? And do you think that's a big factor in this series?
I don't think it's a big factor because they didn't add a goaltender. So, it's great. Listen, I understand what they were doing with Casey Middlestat. And that's not just a short-term play. That's a long-term play. Obviously, when you're trading Bowen Byram, and I say you got to give, and certainly they give. I remember Bob Gainey saying this many, many years ago when we were together in Dallas, and we were talking about players and looking at what we're trying to get when you're looking to acquire certain players. And we were a good team. And he made this comment. He said, when you're going to acquire a player that you're looking to try to help you in the playoffs that has never played in the playoffs, he goes, that's a big stretch. Because that's a big stretch. So I think that Casey Middlestat is a long-term play. I don't think he's a short-term play. And I like Casey. I get what they were trying to do. Like, you're now coming into a team that is expecting to win, that wants to win. He doesn't even know what 1 minute of the playoffs looks like. He had no idea. And what's it going to look like when he's up against Monahan and Lowry and Scheifele and those guys? I mean, that to me is what strikes me. I understand what they were doing, and I like it for the long term. I don't like it for the short term. Based on that, I agree with Bob Gainey. It's a hard place to thrust a player on it. Like, if you want to bring him in and have him in a different spot, but they're counting on him to be a real key second line center against a team that legitimately has 4 guys, maybe 5 guys that can go up the middle and play hard against you and negate you. So I think Sean Walker to me was just a right-hand shot replacement for a lowercase Bowen Byram.
Right.
Again, Casey, I think, is a long-term play. They don't have the goaltending. I don't see them beating the Winnipeg Jets.
Craig Button bringing the heat, bringing the analysis like only you can. We always appreciate your time and your insight.
We've got
Craig.
a man crush on you, Craig.
That's true. Ezra's right about that.
Ezra, you're so kind. You've just made my day.
There you
go. No, we appreciate. I mean, we've been having you on the show we've been doing the show for 15 years. I want to say, I don't know, at least 13 of those 15 years. So we always appreciate you coming on. And obviously, a couple months from now, we got the last ever centralized draft in Vegas. So hopefully you can join us and to talk about the Jets' second round pick. They don't have a first round pick, but they've got a second rounder.
Anytime you want to ask me to be on the show, I'm going to make every effort to be on it. I love what you guys do. You have knowledge, you have passion, and to be part of that. And the Winnipeg Jets are last year, like I said, it was a little bit, it wasn't the ending they wanted. But, you look at what a year has done, and I think Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a fantastic job, Rick Bowness, and you guys do a fantastic job every time you're on the air. Always a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys.
Oh, you're too kind, Greg. When you get to Winnipeg, hopefully you'll get to Winnipeg during the playoffs, and we'll get together and we'll buy you a drink or two under those circumstances.
Okay, I accept.
Or 4, or 5, or 6.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what you do?
Greg.
Stop counting after 2.
That's right, exactly. Nothing good if you keep counting after that. Thank you, Craig. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy day 1, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Enjoy game 1 between the Jets and the Avs tomorrow.
Thank you.
There he goes. Craig Button joining us this morning. Always one of our favorites here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Absolutely. Just terrific analysis, terrific energy that Craig brings to the show. Dave M., if I give you the opportunity to do a wee Manuk Moose Minute, can you keep it to a short time frame? I know you're bubbling with excitement.
They did score 8 goals
I have
there,
a haircut, not a haircut. I have a haircut at 11:45, so we got to make this quick.
Real quick, Dave. You're not going goal by goal. You can give us an analysis.
I won't go goal by goal, I promise.
Okay.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Manuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
So let me tell you about the first Moose goal, and then I'll tell you about the second Moose goal. Okay, just some quick housekeeping notes here with the Moose. Connor Levis, the 2023 seventh rounder, he made his pro debut. Colby Barlow, who we just talked about with Craig Button, the 2023 first rounder, he got back in the lineup. No surprise, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, after making their NHL debuts on Thursday, they both were given the night off. But Parker Ford, who was in warm-up, he was back playing, and so he was back on the identity line with Christian Reichel and Jeffrey Viel. And then Oskari Salminen got actually his first start since January 20th. He was recalled, obviously, because Colin Delia is up with the Jets. Okay, so Salminen plays. The Moose are down 2-0. And it's weird because in 1532 mark, he comes out of the game. I didn't see anything that happened. I don't know. He gave up 2 goals and 7 shots. I couldn't tell if it was it looked like he went to the bench, but nothing obvious happened that indicated he came out other than giving up 2 goals on 7 shots. But nothing happened on a play preceding that maybe indicated he got hurt. But he comes out. Thomas Milic goes in. Seemed to be the catalyst because the Moose started to score. And like Drew's given me a very short window here, so I won't talk about every goal, but I can tell you Christian Reichel leads the Manitoba Moose with goals. He scored 2 in this game. He's up to 23. Parker Ford, the aforementioned, he gives the Moose a 4-2 lead. That was his 18th goal of the year. The goal that all the Jets fans are going to want to hear about, Colby Barlow. He scores on the power play, his first goal as a pro. That gave the Moose a 5-2 lead. By the way, at that point, Colby Barlow's goal, again, his first as a pro, and if you haven't seen it, it is posted on our Instagram or on my Twitter. I see Dave. Colby Barlow's goal was set up by Ville Heinola. That was his 4th assist of the game. He had 4 assists on the first 5 goals by the Manitoba Moose. So Ville Heinola, he had himself a game. He also scored the 7th goal to make it 7-2. And then Simon Lundmark, he scored his draft classman from 2019. He was a second rounder, of course, right shot defenseman. He gets his 5th of the season. That made it 8-2. Amazingly, 5 straight goals. So they scored 8 straight. 5 straight goals were on the power play. So memo to the Texas Stars, don't take penalties against the Manitoba Moose unless you want to get scored on. As I have been discussing for a while, this, of course, is the Moose play-in series that they're going to start. They have one more game, a rematch tonight, and then they'll play the play-in series. It's the best of 3 starting Tuesday in Texas. This series I thought was the best one for the Moose to start with because I think they match up very well against Texas, especially without Logan Stankoven, who, of course, is up with the Dallas Stars. So the kids were all right. The Moose were all right. They obliterated the Texas Stars last night. 8-3 was the final. And we'll see the rematch tonight, 7:00, Cedar Park, Texas. Daniel Fink on the call. And like I said, Colby Barlow, he had a beautiful assist too. He set up that 8th goal by Simon Lundmark. So he had a goal and assist. And like I said, Ville Heinola had himself a game with 1 goal and 4 assists.
There you go. Good job, Dave. You kept it nice and tight. You hit the extra when you needed to. Well done, good sir. Great Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A ton of fun. We're going to run it all back tomorrow. 4:00, downtown Winnipeg, City Place, 2nd floor, the food court. You can eat and watch and listen. Look for the giant Illegal Curve poster. That's where we're going to be. You can't miss us. You'll be able to hear us and you'll be able to see us. You can't miss us on the 2nd floor of City Place. We'll be there tomorrow, 4:00, getting you set for the Jets and the Colorado.
Drew, do you want to do line rushes? Just came out, Drew. We can talk about the line rushes.
Well, is there anything that I should be that's interesting there?
No, but Gustafson is on the 4th line with Nemestikov and Iafallo,
which is what we expected. So there you go.
That's courtesy of Mitchell Clinton.
Yeah, exactly. So Gustafson with Nemesnikov and Iafallo. Everything else exactly.
Forgot the V there for a second, Drew.
Sorry, yes, exactly. I did. Everything else exactly as you would have expected. But of course, complete coverage on illegalcurve.com. Complete coverage tomorrow on the Illegal Curve pregame show, then the Jets and the Avs, and then the Illegal Curve postgame show. So if you're not already doing so, and really, folks, what have you been waiting for? Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast. We have so much content coming your way covering the Jets and the Avalanche in its entirety. We can't wait for you to be along for the ride with us as we delve deep into the Jets and the Avs over the next week, 10 days or thereabouts. Want to say a big thank you, of course, to Ted Wyman and Craig Button. They joined us this morning on the show. In case you missed any of those interviews, the immediate replay is available on the YouTube channel. The podcast will be available shortly as well. Big thanks to all the sponsors who make this show, this post-game show, the website, a possibility. That's our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, City Place, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza will be there on Friday night for Game 3. Be sure to join us there. Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue. Of course, our friends at Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and Farmery Beer. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Thanks to all of you for joining us. The calm before the storm on Saturday morning. It's all going to get underway tomorrow afternoon. We'll see you 4 o'clock downtown at City Place or back here on our social media channels. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Whatever you're doing, do it safe. We'll see you again real soon. Dave Minuk for Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.